Hello, everyone. We're back. This is Continuing Education, and I am Minister James Moss. All right, so we are in the book of Luke. In chapter 14, we're going to cover verses 15 through 24. This one is entitled, Jesus Tells the Parable of the Great Festival. All right, so we're going to get right into it. The tie between this parable and the previous one is the resurrection. The host who invites the poor, the crippled, the lame, and the blind will be rewarded at the resurrection. Jesus went on to explain that God himself, the heavenly host of the messianic banquet, would offer the same invitation. All right, so here we go. The parable of the great supper. All right. And when one of them that sat at meat with him heard these things, he said unto him, Blessed is he that shall eat bread in the kingdom of God. Then said he unto him, A certain man made a great supper and bade many, and sent his servant at supper time to say to them that were bidden, Come, for all things are now ready. And they all with one consent began to make excuse. The first one said unto him, I have bought a piece of ground, and I must needs go and see it. I pray thee, have me excused. And another said, I have bought 5 yoke of oxen, and I go to prove them. I pray thee, have me excused. And another said, I have married a wife, and therefore I cannot come. So that servant came and showed his lord these things. Then the master of the house, being angry, said to the servant, Go out quickly into the streets and lanes of the city, and bring in hither the poor, and the maimed, and the halt, and the blind. And the servant said, Lord, it is done as thou hast commanded, and yet there is room. And the Lord said unto the servant, Go out into the highways and hedges, and compel them to come in, that my house may be filled. For I say unto you that none of those men which were bidden shall taste of my supper. All right. Very powerful parable indeed. Here we go. Starting in verse 15. Jesus' words about the resurrection sparked a comment from a man sitting at the table. This Pharisee assumed that he and his fellow Pharisees and other leaders would have the privilege to share in the kingdom of God. They counted on their ancestry and their law keeping to have reserved places for them. Jesus would shatter this preconception. Verses 16 and 17. It was customary to send 2 invitations to a party. The first to announce the event. Thus, this man prepared a great feast and sent out many invitations. It does not appear that anyone had declined, so the man made final preparations in order to have enough for everyone. The second invitation told the guests that everything was ready. In this case, the man's servant personally notified all the guests that it was time for them to come. Verses 18 through 20. The guests in Jesus' story insulted the host by making excuses when he issued the second invitation. The guests decided that other matters were more important at the time. The point is that nothing should become an excuse to put off joining God's kingdom. All pursuits, no matter how valid they may seem, can rob people of the great celebration with Christ. Let nothing stand in the way of you following Jesus. Verses 21 and 23 through 23. Upon learning how his invitations had been snubbed, the master of the house was angry, but his banquet was ready. The food had been prepared. Instead of abandoning the whole project, he sent his servant to bring into the banquet hall the poor, the crippled, the lame, and the blind. This done, the servant reported back that there was still room for more. So the master again dispatched the servant to go throughout the country lanes behind the hedges and fill the house. This story would seem scandalous to Jesus' audience. No ancient wealthy person would ever invite the poor. This startling statement told Jesus' hearers that God's kingdom is especially for the poor. Not a morsel of food was to go to waste. If the previously invited guests would not accept the hospitality of the master, then he would invite those who would. Verse 24. In Israel's history, God's first invitation came from Moses and the prophets. The second came from his son Jesus. And Jesus' listeners, the religious leaders, accepted the first invitation. They believed that God had called them to be his people. But they insulted God by refusing to accept his son. They would miss the banquet completely because they refused to accept the son's invitation. They would not even get even the smallest taste of what had been prepared for them. Wow. Thus, Just as the master in the story sent his servant into the streets to invite the needy to his banquet, so God was sending his son to the whole world of needy people to tell them that his kingdom had arrived and was ready for them. Powerful, powerful parable. Because so many people are caught up in, oh, because of my service or because of my lineage or because of whatever, I'm entitled to have a seat in the kingdom of God. You're not. No one's entitled. We have to receive the invitation, accept the invitation, and then when he says it's ready, show up. All right. So this is pretty straightforward. I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about it. As I always say, go back, read it. Make sure you understand it before you move forward. The videos, there's no need for you to rush through them. Ask God for a revelation. And then once he gives you that revelation, ask him for application. All right. Until next time, God bless you. God keep you, and always keep studying.